We're going to talk a little Penn State. I also hate them, but I'm pretty high on them coming into the season. And then we'll talk a little Oregon, too. So the top teams in the Big Ten, as we've kind of talked about the basement. We kind of talked about Oregon and Dan Lanning. We're both big fans. Last year, they run the table. They go 12-0 in the regular season. They win the Big Ten championship game only to get screwed by the committee because they get the winner of Tennessee and Ohio State. They get Ohio State. Ohio State beats them because they had already seen them once. But this year, they reload kind of as they do every year now, right? Like a couple years ago, it was Bo Nix. Nobody really thought that they were going to be any good year one for Dan Lanning, especially after week one when they got blown out. They go on, they win double-digit games. And then last year, 12-0, but now Dylan Gabriel's gone. They bring in Dante Moore, who we think is going to be good. We thought he was going to be good at UCLA. Chip Kelly recruits him. They pretty much force him on the field because they were threatening to leave in the transfer portal, which he ends up doing anyway. When he was on the field, he looked 19 years old, 18 years old. He looked like a freshman. Now, though, he's playing in this offense where nobody was a believer in Bo Nix, especially if you watch Bo Nix at Auburn in the SEC. People were calling him Bo Picks. He got benched a couple different times, and now he's the starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos, which, funny enough, today I was going through old pictures, and I found a picture of the game this year earlier against the Jets, week 2 or week 3, where Bo Nix completed 7 passes in the first half of a football game for -7 yards. I don't know that that'll ever happen again. But back to the task on hand here. Oregon brings in Dante Moore. Oregon goes up 2-1. College baseball with the aluminum bats, though, dude, you can't get too nervous. There's so much scoring.
There is.
But 2-1, 2 outs. You do need to get out of this jam, though, with
definitely.
the bases. The bases aren't loaded. Runners on the corners, 2 away. LSU up 2-1. But they bring in Dante Moore. It's still obviously a pretty loaded roster. It's always going to be as long as Dan Lanning's there. The guy could recruit, dude. Mm-hmm. So they open up with Montana State. I'm going to guess they win that game by about 50. They also learned their lesson because remember last year, dude, they opened up with Boise State. And Boise State was 26.5-point dogs.
Yep.
And they were live in that game going into the fourth quarter. Turns out, though, Boise State was a pretty good football team. Oklahoma State after that, Northwestern, Oregon State. The big games for them, obviously, September 27th, they're on the road against Penn State. Then they go home the next week, or after the bye, and they play Indiana. I think they win that game, though. Where are you at with Oregon this year, man? I think minimum, they win 10 games, but I would probably say at worst they finish 11-1. I think they could lose that primetime game September 27th against this Penn State team, but they're going to be a double-digit win team, and they're going to be back in the playoff. The question is just, can Dan Lanning get over the hump? Because a couple years ago, he couldn't beat Kalen DeBoer at Washington, and then last year got clipped in the playoff by Ryan Day in Ohio State.
So I agree. I think they're going to lose to Penn State. I feel like they're going to trip up in another one of their road games as well. They got to go to Seattle and play Washington. Now, obviously, Lanning struggled against DeBoer, but that's still a tough road trip, rivalry game. That'll be difficult. How about they have to go to Iowa and take on the Hawkeyes and Kinnick? That could be dangerous, especially if it's a night game. Then you got some sleepy spots, travel across the country to take on Rutgers on the road. You have Northwestern on the road as well. Then they get like Indiana and Wisconsin at home, which could be some tricky games. That win total feels about right. They probably win 10 or 11 games. I stayed away. I think you're probably better off betting the under rather than the over. I think they're going to lose to Penn State, and then I think there's a better chance they trip up on another game rather than running the table. So I think they're going to be 10-2 and make the playoff.
Yeah, 10-2, 11-1. I think that's probably like worst case scenario. Or they go 12-0 and Dante Moore's the real deal and Dan Lanning's just one of the best coaches in the country and finally gets over the hump. I've never said this on this show, but I'm all in on Penn State this year, at least in the Big Ten, man. That would be my bet, even over Ohio State. I think Ohio State loses week 1 to Texas, and then I don't know. We'll go over the schedule here in a second, but if James Franklin can at least get to the Natty this year, I don't think it ever happens, man, right? Like, they bring back pretty much everybody. I know you lose some studs on the defensive side of the ball, mainly Abdul Carter, but offensively, Drew Aller's back, regardless of what you think about him. Still a really good college quarterback, at least in the Big Ten. Nick Singleton comes back, and Katron Allen, which I was a little surprised that both of them came back. Problem last year was they didn't really have a receiver that could create separation. They didn't have a 1,000-yard receiver, unlike Ohio State, who every year has 2. They had Tyler Warren. Now he's gone, and he played all over the place. Obviously, he was a tight end, but they lined him up in the slot on the outside at the Wildcat quarterback position. But this team is stacked, man. And they have Kyron Hudson now. They have Luke Reynolds at the tight end position, who has some experience as well. They'll be tough defensively, and they bring in Jim Knowles. You with me on Penn State this year?
So I do like Penn State. I will say, if you think they're going to go under their win total, under 10.5, I would actually take a flyer on them to miss the playoff at plus 185. The reason being their non-conference schedule is such a joke. They play Nevada, FIU, and Villanova, okay? And James Franklin always does this with his schedules, and he's very smart too. Those are the first 3 games of their season. Again, Nevada, FIU, Villanova. Then they have a bye week before Oregon comes to Happy Valley. I mean, they're going to have essentially like a month to prepare for Oregon. Like, they're not watching FIU tape. They're not watching Villanova tape. They're getting prepped for Oregon.
Right.
So they're going to have their full focus on Oregon. Then they have the bye week to prep for them. They should win that game. Problem is they have to go on the road and take on Ohio State. They have a cross-country trip to UCLA. Remember, they almost lost that game to USC last year. Have to go on the road to Iowa, which is never easy. Michigan State could be a little tricky game. And then also outside of the Oregon game, Nebraska and Indiana at home as well. Penn State's always good for one home game a year where they play a clunker and play down to their competition. Maybe it's the Oregon game. I kind of have a feeling, though, it could be Nebraska or Indiana. So I'm a little concerned about Penn State maybe dropping some games they're not supposed to. And if they don't win those Oregon and Ohio State games, Ryan, with the non-conference schedule and them getting the benefit of the doubt last year, like, again, it's human nature. I could see a world where they don't make it. So plus 185, I think, could be worth a bet for Penn State to miss the playoff.
Yeah, if James Franklin doesn't win a natty this year, I don't know when it's going to happen. Like I said, that non-con schedule is a joke, man. Nevada, FIU, and Villanova to start off the season before Oregon. So that'll be the big game. It's in Happy Valley. Should be a whiteout, I would assume. As of right now, it will be a 7:30 p.m. kickoff on September 27th. That's one I wouldn't mind being at. UCLA the next week, like you said. And don't sleep on Northwestern. I don't think that they're going to be like a 10-win team, but I don't know, man. They're going to be scrappy this year, I think, especially with improvement at the quarterback position. Ohio State's going to win at least 10 games. Julian's saying I think is going to be pretty good. You have Jeremiah Smith, who, do you think he could actually be, I don't think next year he'd be the number 1 overall pick with this quarterback class, but he's definitely going top 3, right?
Absolutely.
Unless everybody just at the top wants a quarterback next year and all these guys ball out like Lenora Sellers and Cade Klubnik and that.
Smith is so silly.
Good. It reminds me of Jadeveon Clowney. Obviously, he was an edge rusher, but remember after that bowl game where he had that crazy one-handed tackle?
Yep.
We were like, oh, my God, I can't believe this guy has to go back to college for another year. And he pretty much dogged it that final year at South Carolina. Or like Leonard Fournette when he dominated and we were like, oh, man, he's got to go back to school. He would be a top 10 pick right now. That's what that reminds me of. Dude does not look 19 years old. He looks like a 26-year-old bodybuilder of a man. And he's only going to continue to probably get bigger, which is scary, and faster. And I think Ohio State's going to be really good, man. But I'm not betting them to win it all this year just because of the changes.
Same.
I mean, you really have to be a believer in Ryan Day. They lose a ton of talent. They still have a ton of talent. But you also lose Chip Kelly as the OC, and you lose your DC.
Jim Knowles, yep.
Yep, you lose Jim Knowles. So it's kind of like with the Lions, man, right? Like you still have a bunch of talent, and I know that everybody loves Dan Campbell, but Ben Johnson's gone. So let's see how the offense looks now without Chip Kelly, because they really switched things up the second half of the season after that loss to Michigan.
Can I tell you what this Ohio State team reminds me of? It reminds me of the Bama team from a couple years ago who had Bryce Young at quarterback and Will Anderson on defense, and they had the 2 best players in the sport on one side of the ball, just like Ohio State does, with Jeremiah Smith on offense, Caleb Downs on defense. I actually like Ohio State's under 10.5 wins. I really do. I think I'm going to bet this at minus 135. I'm going to lay the juice.
Under?
Yes. They're gonna lose week 1. They're gonna lose week 1 to Texas.
Okay.
Feel good about that.
I do too. I bet that already because I'm a psycho. 3.5 is the price that you could get.
Ryan, they better be careful at Washington. That's not going to be an easy game. Traveling across the country to Seattle. At Wisconsin, I think could be tricky at Camp Randall. That's probably going to be the NBC night game. They're going to be revved up, ready to go for that one. At Illinois, I'm not worried about that. At Purdue, we both think they're going to beat Michigan, but I mean, who knows? They're going to have a lot of pressure. And
they better this year, Ryan.
It's on the road.
Even after winning the Natty, he might get canned.
And look, they do have Penn State at home, which they could lose. Rutgers, UCLA, Minnesota. I mean, you're certainly looking at Texas, Washington, Penn State, and Michigan as the 4 games that stick out. And we got to have them lose 2 of those games. I think there's a chance that it happens. So I'm looking at 10 wins for Ohio State. That Bryce Young, Will Anderson team won 10 games. They lost 2 games. I think this Ohio State team does the same thing. Ryan Day's teams really never go undefeated. They're always you lose a game that they're not supposed to. They usually have some close calls. And you mentioned it, those new coordinators, man, that's a big deal. I mean,
yeah.
before Jim Knowles got there, Ohio State's defense was not good.
Yep.
And he turned them in one of the best units in college football. That is a massive, massive loss. And Julian Sand, we all think he's going to be a good player. He's obviously got great skill weapon guys, but they're losing a lot. I just think they're going to lose to Texas. And then if they lose to Texas, I think this is a really good bet. So I like under 10.5 wins.
I'm looking at the conference title odds right now. What's funny is USC is still sitting there at 18-1. They have a better price than Indiana at 40-1, Iowa at 40-1, Nebraska, who we like, at 40-1. I would bet Nebraska at 40-1, or even Illinois, who I know you're not high on, over USC at 18-1, dude.
I agree.
Lincoln Riley, I feel like he's kind of gotten a free pass there. Last year they had 6 wins, and I get that you're moving over to the Big Ten, and the quarterback situation has really been a mess since Caleb left, but man, what a disappointment.
That's what they're paying you for, is to figure out the QB.
I think it's been a lazy-ass job, and you could blame Alex Grinch. He's gone, and the defense has been a mess, but, I mean, how many different coordinators do you get to hire? So I wouldn't play them. Who would you bet? Ohio State plus 190, Penn State plus 240, Oregon plus 350, or Michigan plus 650? Or take a stab with somebody down the board.
Of the top teams, again, even though I think there's value on Penn State to miss the playoff, if you like their under, I think they're a good look to win the Big Ten.
Same.
Just because, like you said, this is the year for Franklin.
It's
all pointing towards this year. But I do like the long shot with Nebraska. I'm going with Nebraska, man. Matt Rule, year 3. We've seen it 2 times. I think this is the year that they break through and could surprise some people. So if you're not taking Penn State, I would look at Nebraska 40-1.
Dylan Raiola season. They open up their season with Cincinnati. Obviously, Luke Fickell's been gone for a long time. He needs to have a winning season with the Badgers. And what's funny, man, is I actually kind of like the Badgers roster, but you brought up that schedule the other night. Good luck. Even the non-con schedule is a nightmare.
Yep.
But I'm looking at Nebraska's schedule right now. So potential losses. Michigan, but you get that game at home, September 20th at 3:30 p.m. Michigan State will be tough. That's a tough back-to-back. Michigan and then Michigan State the following weekend, but both of those games are at home. Toughest road game is November 22nd against Penn State. Even if they lose that game and they finish with 11 wins, they got a shot, man. And I'm a believer in Matt Rule. I'm only kind of sour on them because last year I went over the win total and I only needed one more. Mm-hmm. One more is all I needed.
Tough, dude.
It was rough.